So this is going to be my hardware in the loop pool of devices. The Raspberry Pi, the big Pis are going to be the gateways. This is a 5 and a 4 and a 4. And then the Raspberry Pi Picos are my stand-in for any kind of embedded board you might be developing against. The Picos cannot run GitLab Runner because they're much smaller and more focused on RTOS type applications. And then we'll be putting the GitLab Runner on the gateway devices. So we'll start with that now. All right, let's dig into how to create a hardware in the loop pool within GitLab with this new component. Components is a new thing at GitLab, so I'm going to show you how to find them. And then we're going to use the components README in order to find our way through. So we are going to go to this search or go to right here. And then there's this explore button here. Once we click into that, we have this new option CI/CD catalog that you may not have been exposed to yet. And I'm going to search for device cloud. I get this first hit here. This is a component that I've created. GitLab CI/CD components are small reusable pieces of GitLab CI, and they are actually on the dependency system where you depend on this code and you can version peg it. So this README file tells you how to use it. Just want to take a look at this first example right here. This example is the simplest way to use it. So you literally need two variables and one include. And as long as you have a file called glowhill CI pipeline.gitlabci.yaml, then it will be detected and processed in the device pool that is specified by the two variables. So that's pretty simple. However, it doesn't end there. There is a lot more complex scenarios you can take. So because of the way this component's built, you can take full manual control and create multiple pipelines. You can create pipelines that target different hardware pools all in the same pipeline or in the same project. So you can start to make it as elaborate as you deem desirable. Then as we get down further here, we can see GitLab least privilege. So this takes advantage of GitLab least privilege as well as GitLab least config. So least privilege means we make decisions that cause the least amount of privilege risk. And so in this case, I'm using 2 access tokens so that we can isolate the permissions that those tokens need and they don't inherit to a whole bunch of additional groups where it's not necessary. So we're going to take a look here. It says right here, as you dig through, it says setting up the Hill pool. So this component requires the deployment of a project to house some GitLab CI variables for allocation and deallocation. The steps in Hill management setup will need to be completed. So let's go there. And it says create a new project to house the Hill data that tracks the GitLab allocation to pipelines. Now, gateway runner allocation to pipelines. There are some advanced setup notes here that tell you what some of these things are used for. So I'm going to create this project, and I've created a new subgroup to work out of. And if we look down here, it says the last segment will be used as the first part of the runner tag. So I'm going to go ahead and create it very similar to this right here. And then we will see that this level here becomes part of our tag. So let's go ahead and we're going to keep it a little bit simpler. So I'm going to create the project right at this level. And then we're going to put our runners at this group level. So I'm going to say create new project. I'll create a blank project. We'll call it RPI Pico W, since that's the name of the hardware that's attached to our gateway runners. So we're really targeting that kind of hardware. I'll hit create project. While it's creating, we'll take a look at our documentation. It says to copy this README file. I'm going to skip that, but that README file basically tells anyone who looks at that project, hey, there's just variables in here, and you can take a runner offline by changing the data of one of the variables, or you delete a variable in order to deprovision a runner so it's no longer part of the pool, things like that. So it says to set the friendly name. And the friendly name will also be used in a variety of areas in the automation. So we'll go into settings, general, and we'll set the project friendly name is what I call it. So the path will stay the same. So both the path and this friendly name are used in our automation. So we'll save this. And then it says to copy the group name with no host name and keep it in a temporary doc. So actually what it's going to tell us to do later is to grab this parameter set and edit it. So I'm going to grab it right now and we're going to build it as we go. So we'll just bring it into VS Code here. It says to grab the, let's see here, path. It should not include groups or be taken from an IDE path. So basically, sometimes GitLab, if you're editing in an editor, the path will look different. If you're looking at raw files, it'll look different. What we want is just the straight group name out to the project name right here. I'm going to copy that. If you find it confusing to know what to take, then in the repository, click right here at the top level. And now you can take everything after the host name. So you could take all of that and you'd know you have it right. And I'm going to hop in here and we're going to, oh, actually in this case, let's just grab this path to the project and we're going to put that in Hill Pool right here. Looks like we might have that in there twice. So I'm going to delete one of them. You always need an equals, and these are always long parameters. I did some study into parameters, and if you start supporting spaces and short options, it starts getting confusing, and sometimes your parsing doesn't work out well with bash parameters. So you always need the long name and an equals in between the values. We're going to go back to our docs. Okay, within the project, create a token with the role maintainer and the scope API. So this is going to allow us to create and manage variables. So I'm going to go to settings, access tokens, add a new token, change variables. It said, I believe, okay, maintainer and scope API. So picking the right role is always important. A lot of times people get confused. They leave it at guest and then they wonder why they don't have permissions. When you create this token, like many tokens you create on the web, you only have one chance to copy it and then it's forever gone and you'd have to start over. So I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it into here. By the time I post this video, these tokens and these groups will be gone. So I'm not too worried about masking them, just so you're aware. Okay, so now we've got that project access token and we'll need to place it in this variable later. Create a runner group, for example, like that. So I'm going to go back to here to our tutorial level. And the runner group, it's best to make it so it flows down throughout all the projects that need to use the runners. If you don't do this, it can be very frustrating when provisioning new runners to have to go manually turn them on in different projects or groups because they're not part of the downbound hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is create a new subgroup at this level for all embedded projects. And then I'm going to use it as my runner group. So this would essentially, if we go back to the root here, this is what I call the Hill data pool. So this is where the allocation, deallocation information lives. And this is the level at which our runners live. The runners could be in completely different hierarchies. So the tokens that we use to do this stuff, they could be in different places, but what should be in the same place is your runner group should flow down through all the projects that need to use it. That will make it the most sensible for you. Okay, so we created that group. And then it says to create a token. Yeah, here we go. That's the project token, runner group. And so we need to now create group access token with create and manage runners and owner role. So we'll go into settings and access tokens, add. And now this token name will appear every runner that gets created. It will say created by user and then the name of the token. So I'm going to say runner provisioning. And then we'll say for RPI Pico W. So basically runner provisioning for that particular hardware pool. Say owner, create and manage runner. Create the token. I'm going to copy it. And we'll go back to here And we'll put in our group access token for the runner group. Populate the variables in parameter set 1. Also notice that this is not a runner token. It is a group access token that will create runner tokens for us. And that's because we need to have control over the tag. It says complete the parameter set 1, complete populating it. So here's parameter set 1. And the runner group URL is just the one that was in the sample. So we need to get that. So I'm like, I'm going to get confused here. There's some other stuff and there's groups on here. So I'm going to go back, and we don't want that groups in there, and hit here. And now I know that this is the group URL that I need. So I'm going to paste that in there. It wants the runner group ID. And the way you get this is you go to Settings, General, and the runner group ID is right here. Grab that and paste it right in here. And then let's see, did we get everything else? So we've got, and here we just have the subpath because we're going to learn the GitLab URL from here. So we're able to pick up everything that we need. Okay, I think this is complete. So now we're going to move to our hardware. And I plugged in one of the Raspberry Pis. We're going to kind of video some of the setup because it takes a while and clip out some of it. And then after that, I'll do the other 2 and we'll kind of look at the results. So I'm going to SSH to my Pi. So I'm going to do, I'm not going to run it with verbose. If we get an error, I'm going to add the verbose flag, but there's also a verbose flag that sets a couple things that gives a lot more verbose output if we end up having problems. Just a quick note that if you're really fast into the Raspberry Pi after it boots and you run a script really quickly, sometimes certificates are not completed deploying and you get this error message. Simply try again after a little bit of time has passed and you should be good to go. Here we go. So it pulled down a script, dropped it in the temp folder, permissioned it to run, and then started running it with all of our parameters. Okay, so now it's going to be adding some packages. There's some requirements for running GitLab Runner. It's going to resolve those. It's eventually going to download the GitLab Runner package, which it's doing now. And then once it gets that package, it's going to run it. And we're going to then also reach over and register the runner in that group that we set up, and also create the variable in the other group that we were setting up for the Hill Pool data. So it's going to do everything for us at this point. So I'm going to let it run, and then we'll come back to it when it's done. All right, everything is completed. Let's go look at our actual repositories to see what happened. So here I'm in the embedded device cloud. So if I go into build runners, I should find a new runner, which I do. Notice here, created by runner provisioning Pico, RPI Pico W, which is our token. And it says, do not use runner tags directly. So one of the things is if folks come in here and use this tag and ship something to it, it will avoid the our orchestration and allocation system. So this is not built into GitLab. This is a solution built around GitLab. So it tries to give that warning. If we click in, it gives further information. So it gives this information here. This is the description of the project that tells us which device cloud it is. And then this is the actual identifier for this runner. So that's both the runner tag as well as the variable that does the orchestration. I tried to do lots of cross-referencing here. So it's saying hill pool allocations are in this area or this other project. So now I'm going to click that URL and open up that project. And we can go directly to the CI/CD settings. And so we're now in the other project that we created, but anybody who's unfamiliar can kind of find their way around. And we're going to hit variables. And we can see there's a new variable created. Variables also have descriptions. So it's just telling us here that if we want to go back to the runners associated with this, we can do that here. So the URL is given both ways. I'm going to hit reveal values, and we can see that we deployed as online and available. That means when a pipeline comes in and says, hey, I'd like to grab a runner, it's going to be looking for that value in order to know that it's available. So that's the artifacts that were created on both sides by that script that installed the runner. It also installed Docker Runner by default, and it can install the shell runner. And if you watched the other video, I mentioned that a lot of solutions that folks put together with this only allow the shell runner because that's the way they've figured out how to peg a pipeline to a runner. And so this solution kind of ups the game a bit by allowing you to use the Docker Runner. All right, I'm going to go off and prepare the other two, and then we're going to show you some more stuff. All right, I'm back after installing on all three machines, and you can see here that the fleet is up and running. We've got lights on everything, and now we'll take a look at what happened inside of GitLab. So here's where we left off with GitLab last time. What I'm going to do is go back one level here, and we'll go to the runners level here. You can see we now have 3 runners. Notice that the runner tags all start with RPI PCOW, and then a unique identifier after that. And then let's look at the CI/CD variables. I'm going to refresh here, and it'll end up collapsing the variables again. We'll expand it, and we have 3 variables. So if we take a look here, the runner tags end in VU, FH, and DX. And of course, the variables match as well. If we do a reveal values, we can see that they're all online and available. So that is our fleet provisioned and deployed. What we're going to do in the next video is spend some time creating sort of a hello world project to run, and then run it lots of times so we can see this allocation and deallocation happening.